Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Tonight I've got a truly disturbing story from the heart of Boston, something that's been whispered in the dark corners of Beacon Hill for years. People call it the Boston Basement Massacre, and honestly, after hearing what happened, you'll never look at an old basement the same way again. This story is fictional, but trust me, it feels way too real. It all started one chilly October night. The air had that sharp, biting cold that creeps into your bones even if you're bundled up. You know the kind, where your breath turns white and everything feels just a little quieter than it should. Boston was already spooky in the fall, with its old cobblestone streets, flickering gas lamps, and trees shedding leaves like whispers. That night, 5 college friends, Mia, Jordan, Tyler, Brooke, and Chris, were out just wandering, killing time, looking for something spooky to do. Halloween was only a few days away, and they were in that restless mood where a little thrill felt necessary. They weren't drunk, maybe a little buzzed from the cider Jordan brought, but nothing serious. Just enough to make them laugh a bit louder, dare a bit harder. The streets were quiet. Most people had gone home for the night, and the city had that eerie silence that only comes out after midnight. It was Chris who brought it up first, like he always did. "You guys ever hear of the Keller house?" he asked, eyes glinting like a kid with a secret. They all gave him blank looks, except for Mia, who frowned slightly. "The what?" Chris grinned. "The Keller house near Beacon Hill. It's been abandoned since the 70s. People say it's cursed. A whole family vanished there, like literally vanished. Mom, Dad, 3 kids, no trace, not even the dog." Tyler rolled his eyes. "Dude, come on. That's like every haunted house story ever." "No, seriously," Chris said, getting more animated. "My cousin told me his friend snuck in once and heard voices in the basement. Said he saw writing on the walls, like in blood or something. Swore he'd never go back." Brooke shivered. "Okay, now you're just trying to scare us." Chris shrugged. "Well, it worked." Mia was quiet for a moment. She stared down the street, past the fog swirling near the old lamp posts. "I think I've heard of it," she said softly. "My aunt used to live near Beacon Hill. She told me not to walk by that house after dark." "Why?" Jordan asked. "She said sometimes you'd hear children laughing, but like really faint, like they were down in a hole or something." There was a pause, a long one. Then Chris, being Chris, clapped his hands together and said, "Okay, now we have to go." "Nope," said Brooke instantly. "Absolutely not." "Oh, come on," Chris said, grinning. "You guys wanted something spooky, right? Let's go see the Keller house. Just peek inside. 5 minutes. If it's lame, we leave." Tyler hesitated. "And if it's not? Then we'll have the best story to tell at every Halloween party for the rest of our lives." Against better judgment, because really, they all should have said no, they agreed. The walk to Beacon Hill was quiet, which was weird, considering how loud Boston usually is. Even the street cat seemed to have disappeared. The trees around it were twisted, like they'd grown in pain. And the house itself? It looked like it had been sick for years. The paint was peeling. Windows shattered. The roof sagged on one side. But the front door was open just a crack, like it had been expecting them. Nope, 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 Brooke muttered again. But Chris was all... The rest followed, some more hesitantly than others. Mia hesitated at the gate, her hand on the cold iron. Something didn't feel right. Her gut was screaming at her to turn around. But she didn't want to be the one to ruin the fun. So she stepped through. The porch creaked under their weight. The wood was soft and damp. Jordan touched the door gently, and it swung open with a low groan that sounded almost like a sigh. They all froze. Inside, the house was dark, not just shadowy, but dark, like the walls themselves absorbed any light they tried to shine. Chris stepped in first, phone flashlight in hand. The beam barely reached a few feet ahead. Dust hung in the air like fog, and the smell, oh man, the smell. It hit them like a wall. Damp, rotting, almost metallic, like rust or blood. Tyler gagged a little. What is that? Dead raccoon, probably, Chris said casually. They wandered through the front room, stepping over broken furniture and shattered glass. Every floorboard groaned under them. There were photos on the wall, but they were all torn. Faces scratched out. In one, you could still see a kid's hand, but nothing else. Guys, Mia whispered, we should seriously not be here. But no one was listening. Chris had already moved deeper into the house. That's when he found it. A door in the hallway, half hidden behind a moldy curtain. Basement, he whispered. He said with a grin. The door was locked. Not just locked, chained shut. Heavy, rusted chains wrapped around it like something was trying to keep whatever was inside from getting out. There were symbols scratched into the wood. Not words, just angry shapes, like something done with nails. Tyler took a step back. Okay, that's enough. We saw it. Let's go. Chris looked around, spotted an old toolbox on the floor, and pulled out a bolt cutter like it was fate. You've got to be kidding, Brooke muttered. Chris ignored her. With a few loud clangs, the chains snapped. The moment the last one hit the floor, a gust of cold air blew up from beneath the door, as if the house took a breath. The door creaked open slowly. Blackness stared back. And they just stood there. Nobody wanted to be the first to go down. But also, nobody wanted to be the one who chickened out. So Mia, shaking slightly, turned on her flashlight and said, "Let's make it quick." They stepped onto the staircase, one by one, the wood groaning under their feet. The deeper they went, the colder it got. The kind of cold that makes your teeth hurt. They didn't know it yet, but the moment that basement door opened, they weren't alone anymore. Not really. The moment they stepped through the front door, the air changed. It was like walking into a sealed tomb, dust thick in their throats. the kind that clings to your clothes and makes every breath feel gritty. The house groaned quietly, like it was breathing just under the surface. Cold air hugged their skin, despite the warmth of their jackets. Mia pulled her hoodie tighter, her fingers trembling just slightly, though she'd never admit it. Everything inside the house looked frozen in time. Old wallpaper peeled from the walls like dead skin. A rusted chandelier hung loosely above them, its crystals covered in spiderwebs. The floorboards were warped, and every step let out a moan, as if the house was warning them with every move. But it wasn't the cold or the dust that really got to them. It was the smell. It hit hard. It wasn't just bad, it was wrong. Like rotting meat and something else. Something coppery, metallic, blood. Old, dried blood that had soaked into wood and never quite left. Jordan covered his nose with his sleeve, gagging a little. "God," he said, muffled. "What the hell died in here?" No one answered. Chris, naturally, was still the most excited. He wandered ahead with his flashlight scanning the walls like he was on some ghost hunting show. "Come on," he said with a grin. "This place is a classic. It's perfect." Brooke stayed close to Tyler, her eyes darting toward every shadow. The dim light from their phones barely lit more than a few feet ahead, and it seemed like the shadows moved when no one was looking. Like they shifted, just a little out of place, every time you blinked. No one said it out loud, but they were all starting to feel it. That low, buzzing tension in the chest that your body gives you when it knows something isn't right. They wandered through the front room and into the hallway, which was narrow and crooked. On the walls were old family portraits, but the faces were blurred, either from mold or something else. In one frame, only the eyes remained, wide, white, and staring. Another photo was completely blackened, like it had been burned from the inside. And then Jordan found the curtain. It was hanging limply over a doorway at the end of the hall, moth-eaten and damp to the touch. He pulled it aside slowly, half expecting something to jump out. But instead, there was just a wooden door, a heavy one. The wood was scratched, deep gashes running up and down, almost like claw marks. There was no handle, only thick, rusted chains wrapped tightly around it, bound with an old padlock that looked more ancient than the house itself. The stench coming from beneath the door was unbearable now, like the house had been keeping it sealed inside. And it was just now starting to leak out. Jordan stepped back. Nope, that's it. That's the demon closet. I'm out. Chris laughed. This is it. It has to be the basement, where the family disappeared, where the freaky stuff happened. Tyler stared at the chains. Why would someone lock a basement door from the outside like this? To keep something in, Mia said, her voice barely above a whisper. No one laughed at that. Of course, Chris found a way. Always did. As if the house had planned it. An old shed out back still had a pair of bolt cutters inside. untouched by time. He returned with them like a kid showing off a new toy, his breath fogging the air. Without asking, he began to cut. The sound of the chains snapping echoed through the hallway. Clang, clang. The links hit the floor with a finality that made everyone freeze for a second. No one said a word. Chris took a deep breath, then grabbed the door and slowly pulled it open. The cold that rushed out was alive, not like a breeze. No, it felt like fingers, like dozens of icy fingers crawling across their skin, squeezing into their lungs, whispering that it was too late to turn back. The smell grew 10 times worse. It was thick, tangible, like breathing in rot and mold and metal. Even Chris recoiled for a second. The flashlight beam disappeared into the black. The stairs below creaked, ancient and steep. All they could see was a glimpse of the concrete wall at the bottom. "No way," Brooke said, backing up. "This is insane." But Chris was already stepping in. He turned to the others and smirked. "You wanted a story, right?" Mia hesitated. Every part of her body said no. But something else pulled at her. Something deeper. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was pride. Or maybe it was the house itself. Jordan followed next, muttering something under his breath. Then Tyler. Then Brooke, reluctantly. And finally Mia, her heart pounding so loudly it drowned out her thoughts. Each step down groaned beneath them. The air got colder. The walls closed in. It felt like the basement wasn't just under the house. It was under something much older, much deeper. The deeper they went, the more the smell changed. It wasn't just decay anymore. It was something wet, animalistic, like something had died but hadn't stopped moving. The concrete walls were wet to the touch, and the moisture wasn't water. It was thick, sticky. Brooke slipped a little and grabbed the railing, her hand coming back covered in something dark. "Oh my God," she whispered, wiping it on her jeans in disgust. Tyler aimed his flashlight around the base of the stairs. The room wasn't wide. It was long, like a corridor that stretched further than the house should have allowed. On both sides, rusted metal hooks hung from the ceiling. Some held scraps of cloth. Others, something darker. Mia's stomach turned. "What the hell is this place?" Jordan pointed at the wall. Guys, there were words scratched into the concrete with something sharp. Over and over again. "Let me out. Still here. I'm hungry." Some were fresh. Chris took a step forward. "This is insane. This is so messed up. I love it." But even his voice was quieter now, like he was starting to feel what the rest of them were feeling. That they were standing in a place that was never meant to be found. A place that should have stayed buried. Mia turned back toward the stairs and paused. The door at the top was closing, slowly, as if pushed by something they couldn't see. She opened her mouth to scream, but the door shut with a soft click. They were locked in. And that was when the footsteps started. The basement was way bigger than they thought. From the outside, The Keller house didn't look like it could hold anything more than a small root cellar or storage space underneath. But as they stepped further in, the space stretched unnaturally wide, too wide for a house that size. It was cold, the kind of cold that doesn't just hit your skin, but sinks into your bones, numbing your fingertips and making it hard to breathe. The walls weren't drywall or brick. They were stone, crude, ancient-looking stones, damp and black with mold in some places, lined with strange carvings that weren't quite letters. The floor wasn't concrete. It was dirt, uneven, lumpy dirt that felt soft under their feet, like it had been dug up and filled in again. And hanging from the ceiling, chained to thick beams, were metal shackles. At first, they thought they were for pipes, but then they saw the dried. Dark stains crusted around the metal, the rusted bolts embedded deep into the wood. Brooke reached up and touched one without thinking. The chain swung gently, as if it remembered being used. In the far corner of the basement, barely lit by the trembling flashlights on their phones, there was a table. A heavy wooden table with one leg slightly cracked. It looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. Yet on it lay a set of knives, 6 of them, lined up like surgical tools. Their blades were covered in rust, but not completely. In the right light, you could see the edges still shimmered. "Why would this even be down here?" Tyler asked, his voice quiet, like he was afraid to wake the house. Chris stepped closer to the table. "Maybe it's fake, for show." "Why would someone put fake knives in a locked basement?" Jordan replied. Mia said nothing. She was staring at the wall behind the table. It was covered in drawings, more like carvings, really. Deep scratches into the stone, like something had been clawing at it. Some looked like symbols, others like faces. Dozens of faces, mouths open, eyes wide, screaming. Tyler suddenly spun around. "Did you see that?" he said. Everyone turned. "What?" Brooke asked. "I swear I saw something. Something just moved over there, behind the beam." Chris laughed nervously. "You're just freaking yourself out, man." "No, I'm serious. Someone was there." They all pointed their lights in the direction Tyler was facing. There was nothing. Just more dirt, more stone, more shadow. Jordan swallowed hard. "Okay, let's just get back upstairs." They turned around and started toward the stairs. That's when the door slammed shut. It didn't creak or slowly drift closed like in some horror movie. It slammed, loud, final, like someone on the other side had kicked it shut. Mia screamed. Jordan dropped his phone. It hit the ground and flickered off. They bolted up the stairs, all 5 of them crashing into each other as they tried to push the door open. Chris pounded his fist against it, then his shoulder. Tyler tried the doorknob. It didn't budge. Locked. No, more than locked. It felt sealed, like the wood itself was fused shut. "Let us out!" Brooke yelled, banging her fists. "Let us out!" No one answered. There was no sound from the other side, only the basement breathing around them. Chris pulled out his phone. No signal. "I don't have anything." Jordan checked his. "Dead. I dropped it. God, I think the screen cracked. Mia's hands were shaking as she tried to call out. Hello? Anyone? Help us! Silence. And then, the footsteps. They weren't loud at first, just soft creaks, like someone slowly shifting their weight across the dirt. It was faint, subtle, almost like a heartbeat in the floor. They froze. Tyler turned his head. Did you hear that? They all nodded. The footsteps grew louder, closer, coming from the far end of the basement, the part they hadn't explored yet, the part where the light barely reached. It wasn't fast. It was slow, deliberate, like whoever or whatever it was knew exactly where they were. And it wasn't in a rush. Brooke took a step back, her breath hitching in her throat. Who's there? No answer. Only the sound of breathing. Deep, raspy, heavy breathing. Just beyond the edge of the light. And then, a soft, dragging sound. Like someone was pulling something behind them. Something heavy. Chris raised his flashlight. Show yourself, he said, voice trying to sound brave, but trembling. The light caught nothing, just dust and stone and air that felt too thick to be real. Then Jordan's light flickered, just for a second. But in that moment, Mia saw it. A shape. A figure. Standing near the back wall, still as stone, its outline barely visible. But it was there. Tall, thin, head cocked to one side, as if studying them. She screamed. The others turned to look, but the figure was gone. Chris pointed his light around frantically. What the hell was that? Tyler grabbed Mia. Did you see it? She nodded, eyes wide. It was just watching us. Then, all the lights began to flicker. The darkness pushed in harder now, like it was alive. Like it was crawling up the walls and reaching for them. The knives on the table clattered, just slightly, but enough to make them jump. Jordan backed into the wall. This isn't real. This isn't real. It's just a prank. Someone screwing with us. Brooke whispered, who would do something like this? No one had an answer. They stood there, backs to each other, lights swinging wildly, breathing fast, waiting for something to move again. The air grew colder. And then, the footsteps returned, this time, from behind them. But when they turned around, nothing. Mia looked up, slowly. And that's when she saw it. One of the chains above them was swinging. Not gently. Not because someone had brushed it. It was moving like it had just been let go. Like something had been hanging from it. Her breath caught in her throat. She reached up slowly with her light and aimed it toward the beam. There were scratch marks, fresh ones, and a single, bloody handprint. Guys, she said, voice barely a whisper, we're not alone down here. The lights flickered once, twice, and then everything went black. Total, suffocating darkness swallowed the basement like a tidal wave. The sudden silence, combined with the hum of their dying phone batteries, made it feel like the whole world had been sucked into a vacuum. There were no sounds except for their panicked breaths. Every movement now felt louder than it should be. Every shuffle of feet, every whisper of fabric, every heartbeat thumping like a drum inside their ears. Tyler was the first to speak. "Turn on your phones. Now." Fumbling hands reached into pockets, swiping screens. One by one, the dim glow of flashlights came back. Mia's, Jordan's, Chris's, Brooke's, and Tyler's. The lights trembled in their hands, beams slicing through the dark like weak, dying flares. They scanned the room slowly, trying to keep every corner in sight. Nothing moved, but nothing felt safe either. They stood close, practically shoulder to shoulder, huddled together like children lost in the woods. It felt like the shadows were moving, even when the air was still. The basement wasn't just dark. It was wrong. It watched. It waited. Then it began. It started with a whisper, so faint they almost missed it, like a voice curling through the dust. It wasn't coming from the direction they expected. It came from below them, from the dirt. It sounded like a child humming, a low, broken lullaby that didn't make any sense, but scraped against their nerves like nails on bone. Brooke backed up instinctively, her phone shaking in her hand. "This isn't funny anymore, Chris." "I didn't do anything," he said, his voice low. "I'm right here." But no one responded, because in that exact moment, Brooke was gone, vanished. One blink, she was there. The next, she wasn't. Her flashlight clattered to the ground, spinning wildly before the screen cracked and the beam died. They all froze, staring at the spot where she had just stood. "Mia? Did she fall?" Jordan shouted. "No," Mia whispered. There was no sound. She didn't scream. She didn't fall. She was just taken. Chris ran to the spot, searching with his light, but there was nothing. No blood, no body, no sign of struggle. Overwhelming silence. Like the basement had swallowed her whole and wiped the floor clean. Tyler swore under his breath. "We need to leave. I don't care if we have to break down that door. We have to get out of here." Chris turned and took a step back toward the stairs, but the air shifted again. This time, it was colder and heavier. He froze in place. Mia could see the muscles in his neck tighten. He turned his head just slightly, and that's when they heard it. The sound of dragging, something wet, something heavy, like something crawling along the ceiling. Chris raised his light. It was the last thing he ever did. A scream tore through the basement, short, violent, cut off halfway through like a switch had been flipped. The flashlight tumbled from his hand and hit the ground. Its light bouncing madly across the room. The beam caught something, just for a second. Something tall, pale, inhuman, clinging to the beams above them like a spider. And then it was gone. Chris was gone. Jordan screamed, "What is happening?" Mia couldn't breathe. Her hands were trembling, her light flickering like it wanted to give up. Tyler pulled her close. "We have to find a way out. Now." But the basement wasn't just watching anymore. It was hunting. They stumbled backward, away from the bloodstained table, away from the swinging chains, moving deeper into the basement, even though they didn't want to. It was like being in a maze, every turn the same, every wall whispering something they couldn't quite hear. Tyler's flashlight caught a corner, an old metal shelf, tipped over and rusted with age. Jordan crouched behind it, shaking. His eyes were wide, wild. "It took them," he muttered. "It took them. It's here. It's still here." Mia dropped beside him. "What is it? What did you see?" He shook his head rapidly. "Not human. It's not human. It moves like smoke. It climbs the walls. It's in the shadows. It's part of the shadows." Tyler knelt next to them, breathing hard. "We need to keep moving." Suddenly, Jordan froze. His gaze darted over Mia's shoulder. His mouth opened, but he didn't speak. He was yanked backward into the dark so fast, so violently, that Mia barely had time to scream. His light flew into the air, hit the wall, and went out. Gone, just like that. Mia's scream echoed into the black, bouncing off the stone walls like a warning. Only two were left now. She turned to Tyler, tears in her eyes. "It's going to kill us too." "Not if we stay together," he said, grabbing her hand. His voice cracked, but there was steel in it. "We don't let go, no matter what." They started moving again. Step by step, their lights scanning ahead. The air grew thicker, harder to breathe, like walking through syrup. The humming returned, that awful lullaby, like a broken music box buried under soil. Mia blinked, and the basement changed. It stretched. Walls that were just feet away were now yards apart. Doorways that hadn't been there before were suddenly open. The carvings on the wall twisted into new shapes. Mouths, open mouths, all of them screaming. She and Tyler backed into one another, their lights flickering faster now. Something brushed past her cheek, cold and wet, and she turned around, but there was nothing. Tyler gripped her tighter. "I'm not leaving you." And then his light went out. Pitch black. She still held his hand, or she thought she did, until she felt the grip loosen. "No, no, Tyler?" No answer. Tyler!" A gasp, a wet crunch, nothing. Her fingers were empty, and she was alone in the dark. Her light blinked once, twice, and then it died. The basement exhaled, and everything went silent. Mia ran. Not because she was brave, not because she thought she could escape, but because instinct had taken over. Survival had gripped her like ice around the spine and pulled her legs into motion. A flashlight in her hand flickered with every pounding footstep, barely illuminating the madness around her. Nothing about the basement made sense anymore. It was all wrong. Like she was running in circles inside something alive. The hallways were stretching, twisting. Doorways opened into more dark, endless corridors. She could feel the floor slanting downward. Like the further she went, the deeper she fell. Tyler was right behind her at first. She could hear his boots slapping against the dirt, hear his ragged breath echoing her own. "This place isn't real," she gasped. "This isn't a basement. It's not even a house anymore." Tyler didn't answer right away. They turned the corner again. She wasn't sure if it was the same corner as before, and found themselves in a long passage lined with more of those stone carvings. Symbols, faces, hands. Every single one screaming, reaching, like they were frozen mid-beg for mercy. Tyler finally spoke, his voice low and shaking. "If we don't make it out." He paused, looking at her, and for a second, the madness broke, just enough for her to see the boy behind the fear. "Tell my mom I'm sorry for everything." She opened her mouth to respond, to say something, anything, but she didn't get the chance. A sound like tearing meat echoed behind her. Tyler's body jerked. He let out a half scream, half gasp, and then she felt something warm splatter across her arm. She turned just in time to see him being yanked backwards, into the darkness. Something had him. Something big. Something fast. Blood hit the wall with a sickening slap. His light flew from his hand, spinning in midair, before landing hard and dying out. Gone, just like the others. Mia froze. No, not now. She couldn't afford to freeze. She didn't look back. Not really. She saw enough to know Tyler was no longer behind her. That whatever had him didn't want her yet. Or maybe it did, and it was just playing. The thing wanted her afraid. It was working. She turned and ran again, deeper into the blackness, deeper into the maze that no longer followed any law of architecture or logic. Her breathing came out in short gasps now, her chest aching, her legs trembling from panic and exhaustion. Then the lights returned. Not hers, but dim bulbs overhead, flickering weakly like dying stars. A few buzzed and blinked to life, revealing a massive, open space. She skidded to a halt. This room was different, wider, like some kind of underground hall, and in the center, a pit. It was dug right into the ground, a perfect circle, about 10 feet wide, filled with black water that didn't ripple. It just sat there, like oil, thick and lifeless. Around the edge of the pit were hundreds of handprints, pressed into the dirt, small, large, smeared, some like claws, some still wet with blood. Mia stepped back. She wasn't sure how she got here. The house above them didn't have a foundation like this. No basement should have been this deep. This ancient. The air felt heavier here. Not cold, hot, almost humid, like something had. Now she was in the dark again, but this time the dark felt different. It wasn't empty. It was full, crowded, like something was standing inches away, breathing on her neck. Then came the footsteps again, slow, heavy, but not just one set. Dozens, marching around her, shuffling, some dragging. She held her breath, crouched low, and tried to become invisible. A sound came from her left, a low, wet, clicking noise. Then to her right, the faint scrape of nails on stone, And finally, directly in front of her, something spoke. It didn't use words. It was more like a sound, wet and broken, almost like breathing through a throat full of mud. And then she saw it. Eyes. Just two pale, glowing eyes opening in the dark, watching her, not blinking, just watching. Mia backed away slowly. Her foot caught on something. Cloth, maybe a bag. She looked down and saw a backpack. Jordan's. She reached down, hands fumbling blindly, unzipped it, and felt inside. Her fingers wrapped around cold plastic. A phone. She pressed the button. It turned on. The flashlight was still working, for now. The beam flickered to life, and in that instant, the room lit up, and she screamed. They were everywhere. Figures, dozens of them, hanging from the ceiling. Lining the walls. Some were bound in chains, others nailed into the wood like puppets. Their skin was pale, gray, bloated. Their mouths open in permanent screams. Their eyes missing, torn out, and carved into the walls over and over again in a jagged, desperate hand. It sees you. It eats light. Do not turn around. Mia's hand shook so violently, she almost dropped the phone. And then something whispered directly into her ear. But nothing was there. She spun around anyway. And that's when the floor opened. The pit behind her, silent this whole time, rumbled. A deep, guttural groan came from its depths. The black water started to bubble, and something began rising. Not a person, not an animal. Something wrong. Too many arms. Too many joints. Skin that looked stretched too tight over a body that didn't follow any anatomy. A head with no face, just a mouth. Wide and open and wet, full of teeth that didn't belong in any creature that should have ever existed. Mia didn't scream. She couldn't. She ran, trying to catch her breath, with tears blinding her, down another tunnel, another hallway, until her legs gave out and she collapsed. And even then, especially then, she could still hear it behind her. Morning in Beacon Hill is supposed to be quiet, peaceful. The golden light of dawn usually creeps in over the historic brick buildings, the ivy-covered walls, the polished street lamps that line the cobbled alleys like they've stood watch for centuries. But on that morning, something felt off. The street outside the old Keller property was dead still. No birds, no passing cars, not even a breeze. That's when the neighbors finally called the cops. They'd heard screams the night before. One old man on the next block swore he saw a light flashing in the upstairs window of a house that should have been abandoned. But by the time the sun came up, there was no sound, nothing, just silence. When the police arrived, the house looked exactly as it always had. Broken windows, sagging porch, paint peeling in long, curling strips. But something was different. The front door was wide open, not cracked, not swinging, open like it was waiting. They entered slowly. No resistance. No alarms. No footprints in the dust-covered floor. No signs of a struggle. But they could feel it too, that heavy stillness, the kind that presses against your skin, like the air is trying to warn you. They searched the rooms first. Nothing. The furniture was still overturned and rotten. Every wall still stained with age and mold. But there was no blood. No sign of the 5 missing students. When they reached the hallway at the back of the house, one officer pointed to the wall. "This is where the door should be." The curtain was still there, torn, hanging limply like old skin. But behind it, nothing. No door, no chain marks, no lock. Just a solid wall, like the basement had never existed. Confused, they brought in dogs, scanners, ground-penetrating radar. Anything that might help them find the basement. But there was nothing underneath the house. Not even a crawl space. The foundation was intact. No openings. No sign of disturbance. It was as if the entire lower level had been erased from reality. Gone. They searched for hours, but all 5 students, Mia, Tyler, Jordan, Chris, and Brooke, were gone without a trace. No bodies, no blood, no footprints, just gone. Except for one thing. Near the back of the living room, under a pile of dust and broken wood, an officer found a phone. It was old, cracked, still on, recording. The screen was glitching. The audio was rough, static-filled. But the timestamp on the file confirmed it had been recording for more than 7 hours. They took it in as evidence. What they found on that phone? Still classified. But rumors always leak. The footage begins with shaky images of the 5 friends joking around, laughing as they push open the Keller house door. You hear Chris making dumb horror movie references. Brooke tells him to shut up. Tyler swears he smells something weird. Jordan cracks a nervous joke. And Mia just looks uneasy. The camera lingers on her face a little too long, like the phone knew she was the one worth watching. They go deeper into the house. Someone, probably Chris, finds the bolt cutters. Then the basement door. You hear them joke again. Someone whispers, "Let's make this quick." The footage gets worse after that. Choppy, glitchy. The audio cracks and distorts. But the fear in their voices becomes real. Fast, you hear the door slam. You hear whispering. Not from the group, but from somewhere off camera. Whispering that grows louder, overlapping, like a chorus of voices speaking all at once in a language that doesn't make sense. Then silence. For a while, there's nothing. Just darkness. Just static. Then footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. heavy breathing, something crawling. And then, one final whisper. You let them in. Now you can't leave. The screen goes black. That was the last trace of Mia anyone ever found. To this day, no official report confirms what happened inside that house. Some say it was a prank gone wrong. Others say it was a cult ritual. The truth? Nobody knows. But something changed after that night. The Keller house still stands, still rotting, still quiet. The city refuses to tear it down. The foundation isn't stable, they say. Too expensive. Because when you walk past the house after dark, something watches you. And sometimes, if you're close enough to the front gate, you can hear it. Footsteps in the basement that doesn't exist. A chain dragging across the floor. A single whisper, just loud enough to make you question your sanity. Help me. People avoid Beacon Hill now, after sundown. They cross the street. Some won't even say the name of the house. Those tours skip that address completely. And every Halloween, someone leaves 5 candles at the gate, one for each of the missing students. No one knows who does it. No one dares stop them. Because the story always ends the same way. No one made it out alive. And no one ever will. Let me know if you'd like this whole series formatted into a YouTube script with voiceover direction, atmospheric sound cues, or visuals breakdown. I can also help you write your channel's horror intro or develop more urban legend style stories in this format. Thanks for listening to tonight's story. If you're alone right now, maybe check your basement. Or better yet, don't. Don't forget to like, comment your favorite part, and subscribe for more horrifying stories like this one. Sleep well, if you can. Hey guys.